This.
God.
Yay.
Well, good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Anybody else? Does it show us on the screen if there's anybody watching?
Yes. And sometimes there are people live and sometimes they watch later.
Sure.
Who knows? Yeah, so what's going on? Where are you in the world? You're in Napa.
So I'm in Napa, California.
Mm-hmm.
Having a little couple with you. My office is also in Napa. Mm-hmm. No, this is not my office.
It's pretty.
Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to find the best way to get a little bit of light in this room. How about you? I'm sure most people know where you are, but
Marin County. Beautiful
awesome.
Marin County. And it was supposed to rain and there's blue sky and clouds. So
we got rain yesterday.
Yep.
So California got to have a little bit of a drink anyway.
Yeah. So
we will not speak of the weather.
Right.
But, what would it take for everyone on here to just perceive moisture in California?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to continue. And I think it's kind of nice to have it rain at night, and let it sink into the ground, and then everybody can enjoy the daylight with some sun. But anyway, that's just my choice.
Well, Miss Julie, what are we gonna conversate about?
Yeah, it's interesting. It wasn't an entity, by the way. Our technical difficulty, but I figured it out. So
take two.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that it might be fun to chat about, spirit awareness and stuff, since Halloween is coming up. And I was actually thinking about doing a class that weekend. But I'm not really sure if that's the weekend to do it because my dad's been really sick. So yeah,
I hear you.
But you're also a Talk to the Entities facilitator.
I am.
I've
been looking at that weekend also, but just hasn't quite landed. Be nice to do something fun.
Yeah.
Maybe a free Zoom or something like that.
So when did you first realize that you were having awareness of the unseen?
Oh my goodness. It's been for most of my life. What I wasn't aware of was how much of the stuff that was going on in my life was entity related. I was one of those kids. I had what do they call them? An imaginary friend that wasn't imaginary. And I can remember him. It was a boy. His name was Johnny. And when I got old enough, I actually passed him on to my sister. Which I think is kind of funny. I'm like, I haven't heard of people doing that before, but I was like, all right, now this is your friend.
Wow.
I'm to whatever shifted for me. And I was one of those kids also that was told most of my life, oh, honey, you have such a vivid imagination. So I was pretty much programmed to believe anything that came up in, relation to all of this awareness of the unseen world was me making stuff up to get attention, making stuff up to justify getting attention at night.
Like, why would you make it up?
Well, the thing for my family was she just wants to get attention.
Yeah,
she's just traumatic.
That's so funny.
How about you, Julie?
Well, what's really cool is when people talk about something like that, like what you had, it sparks all these other things in other people who are listening. They're like, oh, this happened to me. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking about when I was, I don't know, I think it was in 4th grade. I used to play in the woods behind my house with my best friend who lived next door, and they were like fairies, and we would just play and climb on the trees and have little picnics on a tree branch and play with fairies.
I love that. Well, and just exactly to what you were saying, getting into these conversations that we get to have and talk to the entities, we get to acknowledge so much more, like, oh wait, like that was real. You know, we were playing with fairies. And that we still can. Like, this doesn't have to just be, you know, the innocence of our childhood, but really getting into like, all right, well, if that was actually real and happening, how can I add that into my life right now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Innocence of childhood, like we don't know, but in childhood, it's like the total vulnerability of awareness in childhood is more accurate, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. And what would it like? I would like to have a lot more of that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm being able to facilitate this work, and even just with the access consciousness tools, we get to have more access to all of that. But just as you're saying, and now too, in this kind of space that's opening up, I'm like, wow, I'd actually like a lot more of that willingness to just be aware and of whatever was in the moment. Like, there's so much less definition. It was really just like, oh, hi. And it was more the energy of, you want to play?
Yeah.
You know, versus, well, what are you and what do you want with me? Which was, I think, something that got translated as I got older.
Like, the automatic assumption is that it's scary and, you know, it's the boogeyman or something, and something bad's going to happen, instead of like all this joy and possibility.
Exactly.
Wow, it's another one of those places where they say every wrongness is a strongness. So, you know, your invisible friend, that's a wrongness.
Well, it got to be at a certain age, right? Like, it was cute, you know, when I was 4 years old, 5 years old, 6, and then you start getting up into the 6, 7. It's like, you got to be an adult. You have to sort of gotta get out of the fantasy
At
thinking.
6?
Oh yeah. Welcome to my family.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember when I had my kids, my biggest thing was I didn't want to fuck them up. Like, I wanted them to have as much of the space of being that they were when they came in, and, you know, whatever I could do to nurture that. So I would talk with them telepathically.
Yes.
And there were conversations, like we actually communicated that way. And I remember somebody coming over for a play date, and the kids were starting to communicate telepathically, and I could perceive it. And the parent was like, use your words. And I was like, what is that for? Like, they're going to use their words. It's not like they're not going to speak, but why would you train somebody out of that ability? Why not have it all?
Absolutely. That's so interesting, Julie. That just popped something in my world. I'm like, wow, in this reality, there's no value on telepathy. There's the value in what I can see, what I can feel, what I can hear. And I noticed that so much, like sometimes with the talk to the entities work, there are some people who are really interested in it, but for a lot of people, they just don't see the value.
Yep.
It's something that they're like, why would me perceiving all the unseen world and receiving from these incredible beings and being able to facilitate all of these energies, like, what's the value of that?
Yeah.
And it's something we probably have in common, is that's always been more real to me than anything else.
Right? And more fun.
And more fun. Exactly.
But, you know, it's even more practical, because there was another person who brought her son over for a play date, and I get to talk to the parents, and she was talking about how she could never decide on a paint color for her walls and a carpet for
Yeah.
years, their place was unfinished.
Yeah.
And so I just asked her a few questions, and basically when you have a committee going on in there, it's multiple entities. And so I cleared them, and all of a sudden she painted her walls and got a carpet, and like the dining room was done, and you know, she had peace.
Boom,
But
boom.
you don't think about all those voices in your head are actually not yours.
Right.
They're
Exactly.
actually not yours.
Well, and the beauty of having this additional piece of information, like not only is it not yours, but then there are entities and beings that are living with you, that maybe we've been living with since childhood. And then we've have all of these points of views about being indecisive, like you were talking about with that, where I'm just never clear about what I would like in my life, not ever realizing that there may be more than one of you in here attempting to make those choices.
Yep. And so, aches, pains, all kinds of things can be entity related. And it's not necessarily that they're trying to haunt you, but, maybe it's somebody trying to get your attention to give you something. That's a lot of it. Like it's
Give you
actually
something
helpful.
or ask for something. Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
or
like when
or
you
it's
do
like,
that, when you're that bridge,
yeah,
and you help somebody open up to something, it's an incredible rush. It's like,
it really is.
wow.
There's so much energy available with all that. There's so much gifting. And one of the things I think that's been really surprising facilitating work with entities, in the classes or private sessions or whatever. Oh, the train left the station. Well, what is that? Oh, that we think of all this as the realm of death, right? But what I'm discovering is that there's so much of the energy of living.
Yep.
There's so much generative energy. And the more that I work with this, the more I get a sense of what true living is, and the wealth of living, the gratitude for living, which that's one of the things that surprised me about this work. What surprised you most?
What surprised me? I guess the ease of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because it is so easy, and it's not something that you can think about or try to figure out. So it's only in the moment.
No.
So it really helps you build the muscle of being present.
Yeah.
But it's funny how, you think, oh, I don't know if I want to take one of those classes, like that's scary or whatever. But I was always interested and curious, and I thought it was cool. Like, why not?
I definitely did too, but it also took me almost 5 years to take a talk to the entities class. Like, we talk about entities in the foundation, which is great. It's a whole new point of view perspective. But it took me 5 years. And I think partially there's such a capacity and there's such an intensity of awareness that I've been avoiding for most of my life, because I didn't really have the tools that I required. I wasn't acknowledging how aware I was. And I was avoiding a lot of it. So much of it.
Yes. And I really get that this particular set of classes opens up receiving in a whole different way. And people, they want to do money classes and relationship classes, which is great, but it's always about the receiving. And how do you get there? It's so much easier to open that up when it's not part of this normal reality of, physical reality.
Because true receiving is not really done in this reality.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the two elements I've been looking at a lot recently with the four elements of what we work with and talk to the entities: clearing, communicating, receiving, and cooperating. And looking so much more at the cooperation and the receiving aspect, and realizing, like, gosh, for a lot of us, we talk about creating and living in a reality beyond this reality. And that's exactly where receiving and cooperation with the spirit world, and really with of us entities and bodies too.
Mhm.
So if it's so, like you were saying earlier, it's so practical, it's such a pragmatic set of tools to facilitate us actually being able to have beyond this reality and create something beyond this reality, whether it's with relationships or money or anything else. And it's a way to work those muscles in a way that, for me, I wasn't really finding in other areas.
Mhm. So just to clarify for anybody who's like, what are we talking about, this beyond this reality thing?
Mhm.
But this reality is all about limitations. You can do this and you can't do that. This is right and this is wrong. And here are the steps. And like, it's just so cut and dry.
Mhm.
Beyond that are possibilities, magic, lightness, ease. In this reality, you have to work hard, pay your taxes.
Well,
And
you have to judge yourself. You have to
oh,
always make the right choice and never make the
yep,
wrong choice. So, you know what, for me, a great example is what we were talking about earlier with how we were as kids when we were young.
yep,
Like it isn't like we're saying we want to go somewhere else. It's what we are aware of as kids.
yep,
The possibility, the magic, the wonder, and then, like me getting rid of my invisible friend, I went, all right, now I have to start getting on board with the rules of this reality. The way
yep,
I'm seeing everything else done, now I have to learn to be different than what I am and what I'm actually aware of.
yep.
This is like a return.
And like
Yeah.
all the judgment shuts off and shuts down all the capacities to perceive
Mhm.
and function beyond it. But the
Yeah.
cool thing is, you can undo those decisions and you can set aside judgment, and then you have all of your being again.
Exactly. Exactly. And
So it's
there are
not
lots
that
of ways to,
difficult, but it is difficult.
yeah. Well, even so, let's say sitting at a dinner party and someone goes, so what do you do? And I've been at a dinner party when someone else said, oh, you know what? She talks to ghosts. And it's so interesting to perceive what happens in that group. It can be very vulnerable to actually be open with what's true for us. And there's still a lot of judgments. So choosing to be all of you and include the this reality beyond reality, we're talking about possibilities and no limitation, and engaging with everything, seen and unseen in a totally different way.
And it's
We
not
have
just
to be,
ghosts.
no,
You
it's
know,
everything.
it's like my aunt, she took my last talk to the entity class. She's 80.
I
And
love
she's
that.
like, well, I talk to trees. I'm like, yeah, a tree is an entity. I talk to
Yes.
gems and jewelry, and that's
Yeah.
entity. That's a house entity. There's like everything
And
is an
the
entity.
paintings, writing a book, writing a poem,
Yeah.
everything.
So, it's not just about ghosts.
No.
Oh, this
Well,
is
and
funny. Mark says your profession, talk to ghosts.
I
Like,
get a business card.
yeah, and what's so funny about that is, like, that's just one of the
Mhm.
millions of things that we are all capable of if we desire. It's like that 64 pack of crayons, but maybe the 72 pack. I don't know.
Well,
One
and
of
what
the
I find
colors is that you get to talk to ghosts.
exactly. Well, what's funny is sometimes it's with people who aren't, used to having these conversations. Sometimes it's easier to talk about, oh, I talk to ghosts, than it is to say I talk to rocks and trees. And It's a little bit more acceptable sometimes. But that's the beauty of this work. It's communicating and facilitating all energies. And everything is energy.
When
Mhm.
when my jewelry customers come by, they're like, oh, this one's talking to me, you know.
I love that.
It's like,
Well, what's beautiful about you inviting them to even use this language is it gives them permission, you know, to begin that. And I wonder really what else opens up for people when you invite them to like to talk to the jewelry, which one's pulling you, let it talk to you. I
yeah,
wonder if that's opening other doors in their life.
yeah. And yesterday I had a client, and she brought some pieces that she bought from me before, and she wanted to add and create more layers. And
Yeah.
we were talking about playing with that. And I said, these two like to be together. Can't you feel that? And these don't. They're like, mm. And it's kind of like horses. Sometimes horses like each other, and some horses don't like each other, and you can sense it. And they're not saying anything, but you can sense it. And so I was sharing that, and she's like, "Oh yeah, and I can wear this one and this one because they like each other." It's
I love
just
that.
fun, opening up the world of energetic language, and what we've always been aware of, but never really acknowledged, I guess.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's such a great point because people are like, well, what are you going to open up in me? Like, let's say I talk to the entities class. What are you going to show me? What are you going to teach me? And it's something like the belief that is outside themselves, but it's like, no, actually, what if you're just opening up to your awareness of what you already know? Like everything is already talking to us. It's whether or not we're actually really perceiving it and receiving it.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I mean, I don't know about you, but it makes life a lot more fun.
totally.
Right?
Like if
There's a
you've
lot of
ever
ways
lost
to.
your keys, or where's your phone, you're like, keys, where are you? And they'll show you a picture, or you'll
Yes,
scan and you'll look right at them because you're engaging with it.
that's a great word. Yes, engaging with all the energies. So, what other practical ways do you use all of this? So, finding your keys, finding lost objects.
Yeah, I used to try to think about how I could use these tools in my
Mhm.
work and in my life, but it had nothing to do with thinking. And it was just something that I always bead, even though that doesn't make
Yes.
grammatical sense. And, and it took years to actually come to the awareness of like, oh my God, I'm doing this in every place. Like somebody wants a necklace or a pair of earrings, and I get this instant energetic download of what will contribute to their body, what will make them look beautiful. And just boom, there it is. And all kinds of things like that.
So,
That
yeah, much more about acknowledging what we're already being. Mhm.
and you think nothing of it because it's
Yes,
just how you function. And you probably never thought that it had anything to do with energy.
right.
But
Well, kind
how
of
many of
like,
you know when somebody's like, I'm fine, and like they are not fine?
no. Or you phone somebody and they're like, how do you always know when to call me?
Mhm.
Like you always call exactly in those moments when I really needed to hear from you. It's like, yeah, we do know. And we're all doing it, all the time.
Yep. So don't take a talk to the entities class if you don't want to have more ease and know what you're capable of.
Yeah. And it might be, fun for those of you listening just to start looking back over your life and asking yourself some of these questions.
Yeah.
Like, where are you actually functioning from engaging with the consciousness of everything around you and your awareness of it that might just seem like it's happening? But there to start to look for the magic that's around in the I don't know how to put that into words, just what if you actually started to stop and look and go, all right, what actually is engaging with me that maybe I've never noticed before? Because the more that we can just acknowledge it, it gets bigger. It gets more starts showing up. And then more of the things I've noticed, the more I've done this work, how things around me start talking. And I'm like, I never expected that to come from this or from this. I was doing a session yesterday, actually, and I've started selling crystals in my office. And they're all sitting over on the side, and all of a sudden, they were like these little fairy energies, every single one that was a little bit different, that was sort of chattering. And I sort of looked over like, wow, there's all these murmurs coming from over there, and each one of them basically showing me how it would like to contribute to that body and contribute to that being. And I thought, this is so fun.
Yep.
Like, what else wants to contribute? What else wants?
I know. That's why I just
Talking
love
into-
these guys.
Yes. They're beautiful, but there's so much more. Like, they're little beings.
Yep. And they all have totally different energies, and they tell you where they want to go, kind of like a plant, no, I don't want to be over
Yes.
here. I want to be over here. No, I don't want to
So-
go with that person. I want this person.
Yes.
It's awesome. Oh,
It is.
it's 10. I've got to go do my expanding exercise in the other group.
Your
This
group
was so much
hopping.
fun.
This was. Thank you for inviting me, Julie.
Yeah,
Thank you
let's
for
do it
listening, y'all.
again.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. Hope you got something out of this. And if you like, join me in the Expand Space to Unwind group so we can expand and relax and step into more possibilities. Bye.
Bye.